figures is the worst that I've ever seen it in the nearly 30-odd years that I've been in the industry. I think it's definitely the worst that I've ever seen it.
Most growers are subsidising their farms.
We have over 2 billion litres or 2.9 billion bottles worth of wine, and that equates to over 875 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of wine.
What we're looking for is a course correction.
It's a crying shame because they were beautiful vines, but you can't keep working for nothing.
Australia's wine industry is in crisis, and it's inland grape growers who produce Australia's bulk wine who are on the front line. Third-generation grower Peter Cremasco has spent his working life tending vines here at Yenda in southern New South Wales. Some of them were planted by his grandfather. But low prices paid for fruit have led him to rip out more than 80 hectares of vines in the past 2 years.
Yeah, they were good producing vines, but at $150 a tonne, 4 tonne to the acre, 2 and 2 don't make 4. So not much we can do about it.
In their place, he's now planting plum trees to produce prunes, one block becoming a home.
Good productive land, go on to the pack.
On this part of his farm, the downturn means extreme pruning.
So Kath, this is my take on mothballing.
It's a bit different to switching the lights off and walking away, yeah.
Yes.
These Shiraz vines have been cut off at the base.
I've got no water costs, no fertigation costs, I've got no labour costs, no spraying costs. I'm not going to make a loss on it. The vine is strong, healthy, and it was an absolute shame to pull it out. So this is our take.
He hopes to wire and train the vines when prices recover.
So yeah, I don't think I'll be cropping these until 2027, 2028. But all the infrastructure's here, all the drip irrigation's here, all the posts are here. So we're halfway there. I have faith that the industry will come back. Is it misplaced faith? I don't know.
Jeremy Cass works with growers across the Riverina and in 30 years in the industry can't remember a more difficult time.
Horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Talking to old guys around the place, you know, I don't think they've seen it as this bad either.
Before the pandemic, growers were paid around $600 a tonne.
We saw some growers this year just outright refuse to pick grapes at $150 a tonne, which was what was being offered as the bottom price by some wineries around the place, which equates to basically 15 cents worth of grapes going into a bottle of wine.
Excavators like this one behind me are now working flat out across the Riverina and other inland growing regions of Australia, where growers say the returns for grapes are so low, they're simply not worth harvesting.
There's too much wine in the world and not enough people are drinking it. A new report last month shows wine drinking rates are now at a 27-year low around the globe. Analyst Pia Piggott says wine production has surpassed consumption every year for the past decade.
People are more health conscious. We're also seeing demographic changes and particularly with younger generations, more competition in the drink space from other categories. So moving away from wines to other alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverages. And we're also seeing that those high levels of stocks are compounding year on year.
She says in Australia's inland regions, prices for grapes have fallen 54% over the past 3 years. In the case of Riverland Shiraz, the most commonly grown variety, it's a price drop of 67% since 2020. That's when China introduced hefty tariffs on Australian wine, accusing Aussies of dumping wine and anti-competitive behaviour. The claim was never proven and widely considered a form of political coercion in a broader trade war.
China was our biggest export market. They made up over 18% of export volume, but 40% of export value. So they were paying a premium for Australian wine that other export destinations were not.
The tariffs were removed at Easter, but after 3 years with its number one customer out of the market, a massive wine glut remains.
The estimates are that there's around 500 million litres of red wine sitting in tanks, barrels and bottles around the country, which is an enormous amount. That sort of stock to sales ratio is something that can't be worked through with the reopening of any single market, even a really significant one like China. So this is something that's going to take some supply side adjustment.
Some analysts estimate the area under wine grapes will consolidate by 8% in Australia in the next 5 years. But Lee McLean from Australian Grape and Wine says in some regions it could be higher.
Some people have said that it's up to 20% that needs to be removed, but it's, what the key thing is for us to get the supply and demand about right. We want to get to a position where things are in balance, where grape growers and winemakers can all be making a dollar and working together for the common good.
After a run of tough years plagued by low prices and difficult growing conditions, the Australian wine industry is now seeking $86 million in this month's federal budget. The cash would go to expanding markets and boosting domestic tourism and cellar door initiatives. But perhaps most controversial is the ask for $30 million to support growers to rip out their vines and plant alternative crops.
We're looking for some assistance for those growers who may be looking to exit the industry or look to do other things in agriculture. We know that one of the big barriers for grape growers who may be looking to exit the industry is just the sheer cost of removing vines and removing all the vineyard infrastructure in a sustainable and safe sort of way.
Removal of chemically treated pine posts is one of the biggest expenses.
The only way they can be treated at the moment is be wrapped up and put into landfill. We used to be able to pull everything out when we had the old posts, push them into a big heap and burn it. Well, you can't do that anymore, which means more cost of actually removing the vines before you can even think about contemplating putting something else in.
It costs about $7,000 per hectare to remove vines and can take up to $30,000 per hectare to then establish plantings or new varieties of horticulture. The industry is asking government for grants to cover part of the cost, essentially helping wine grape growers to grow fewer grapes.
Why should taxpayers be bailing you out?
Well, the reality is for us, many of these issues that we've faced over the last couple of years have been driven by factors completely out of our control. So the trade tensions we've had with China have led to this oversupply scenario that we have. What we're looking for is not a baked in systemic sort of assistance measure from the government. What we're looking for is a course correction.
I think this is the best thing what we can do, is to push them out and try something else.
There have been examples in the past where there's been different schemes put in place to both remove vines, but there's also been incentives in the past, government incentives to plant vines as well through managed investment schemes and the like. But what is different this time is that I think the industry really does recognise that there is a fairly unique problem. We know that we are at a bit of a crucible sort of moment for the sector. We need to be making some adjustments now so we don't have a really hard landing for a lot of those growers and a lot of those communities over the next couple of years, which is what we're trying to avoid.
The federal government's indicated there won't be industry-specific support in this budget. A spokesman telling Landline there's already help available in the form of the Farm Household Allowance and cheap loans offered through the Regional Investment Corporation.
Australia's largest wine producer, Treasury Wine Estates, is backing the call for the Commonwealth to do more.
Look, it's been a particularly tough 3 to 4 years. And a lot of the issues that have not only plagued the broader industry have really concentrated on the inland commercial growing regions of Riverland, Riverina and also Sunraysia. So that's the
Karen Petty is Chief Supply Officer at Treasury, working with growers across inland regions as well as at its own wineries.
Well, as an industry, we've been trying to work with growers and sort of aiming towards next year being the year that things come good, but these trends that are affecting growers are enduring. This is different to all other cycles we've seen. So it's time for the government to help step in and give afford growers a choice if they want to exit the properties, allowing them to do that in a sustainable way. And if they want to stay on the properties and continue farming in a more efficient way.
Like many Australian wineries, Treasury has wine on its way to China. The first major shipments since tariffs lifted are likely to hit retailers later this month. It'll take time to discover what type of appetite remains for Aussie wine, but globally, the shift towards more luxury wines is on.
We have seen a shift in our consumer preferences, moving from more commercial wine to they're moving up, I suppose, and trading up in their preferences to more premium type products.
It's unclear what that could mean for growers like Bruno Elton, who farms at Nericon in the Riverina.
I'm happy on the farm. I like farming. Whether or not I will always be a grape grower, I don't know.
He says in some ways he's one of the lucky ones, finding a buyer for all of his grapes, albeit from a reduced harvest this year. Then he puts the situation into startling context. The price growers are receiving equates to about 15 cents per bottle of red wine.
So the label's worth more than that, you know, the bottle's worth more than that. The container deposit scheme is, you know, getting close to what we're making. So if someone can take a bottle and put it in a bin and make what we're making, it's pretty sad. Most growers are subsidising their farms by selling water, driving trucks, going out and helping with wheat harvest and all that sort of thing. Or their wives are working in town and doing the books at night.
It would typically be a quieter time of year on the farm, but the jobs, like testing irrigation lines, have piled up. Like many, he's had to cut costs, hiring fewer casuals and reducing other inputs.
So we're probably a bit taking more risks that we normally wouldn't. And as a result, you know, with the wet weather that we did have, we lost tonnes, you know, we lost grapes. So, and everyone did, because everyone's trying to do the same thing. Wherever we can cut, we will. We've got no choice.
Did you ever think you'd be part of an industry that was seeking that support?
Look, it's not the first time that wine grapes has been in trouble, so to speak. I think we're very unique. Most industries have got more than one avenue for sale. Like, for argument's sake, the almond industry, they can make almond milk, they can make flour, they can put in confectionery, they can do multiple things. Whereas wine grapes are only used for wine. We don't have a juice line, we don't have some other avenue of sales. So unless we sell more wine or reduce what's in the ground, then nothing will change.
A clear call to action as Australia's wine industry seeks a brighter day.